During a surprise visit to one of his stores, a businessman comes across a scene he would never forget. A little girl in poverty holds a coin and, with all her innocence, asks at the counter for something impossible: a mommy. Upon understanding the pain behind that request, the businessman makes a decision that will change not only her life but also his own forever. If you love great stories, please subscribe to our channel and comment where you're from. We continue. Chapter 1. The Coin and the Request. The morning sun cast long shadows across the gleaming floors of Reynolds Market, the crown jewel of Matthew Reynolds' growing supermarket empire in Detroit. At 42, Matthew had built his business from a single corner store into a regional chain that employed hundreds. This particular Tuesday, he was conducting one of his unannounced store visits, a practice that kept his managers on their toes and gave him insight no spreadsheet could provide. Dressed in a charcoal suit that belied his humble beginnings, Matthew blended in with the shoppers, observing the checkout lines, noting which shelves needed restocking, and watching how employees interacted with customers. Everything seemed to be running according to the exacting standards he demanded. Reynolds Market No. 7, located on the border between Detroit's revitalized downtown and its struggling East Side neighborhoods, was performing admirably. Matthew checked his watch, a subtle Patek Philippe that had been his first indulgence when the business finally turned profitable. He had a board meeting in 2 hours, plenty of time to finish his observations and make it back to headquarters. That's when he saw her. A small figure hesitated at the automatic doors, so tiny that the sensors almost failed to detect her presence. When the doors finally slid open, she stepped inside with the cautious determination of someone venturing into unknown territory. Matthew's attention was immediately captured by this child, who couldn't have been more than 6 years old. Her clothes were clearly well worn, a faded purple t-shirt several sizes too large, jeans with patches at both knees, and sneakers so tattered that her toes peeked through the right one. Her dark hair hung in matted tangles around a face that, despite its evident hunger and exhaustion, radiated an innocent earnestness that struck Matthew to his core. The little girl approached, the nearest cashier, stretching up on tiptoes to be seen over the counter. In her small hand, she clutched something tightly. When she finally opened her palm, Matthew saw a single tarnished coin, a quarter that seemed to represent everything she had in the world. "Excuse me," her voice was small but clear in the suddenly quiet store. "I'd like to buy a mommy, please." The cashier, a college student named Tyler, who Matthew knew was one of their best employees, looked bewildered. "I'm sorry, sweetie. What did you say?" "A mommy," the girl repeated, pushing the quarter forward. "I need to buy a new mommy. My mommy is very sick, and I don't know how to make her better. But a new mommy would know how to fix everything." Tyler looked around helplessly, clearly unsure how to respond. Other customers had stopped their shopping, watching the scene unfold with expressions ranging from amusement to concern. Matthew found himself moving forward without conscious decision, drawn by something he couldn't name. "Hello there," he said, kneeling down to meet the girl at eye level. "My name is Matthew. I own this store. Can you tell me your name?" The child studied him with wary eyes that had seen too much for someone so young. "Lily," she finally said. "My name is Lily." "It's nice to meet you, Lily. Can you tell me more?" "About your mommy?" Lily's bottom lip trembled slightly, but her voice remained steady. "She's been sick for a long time now. She's hot and cold at the same time, and sometimes she talks funny, like she's dreaming when her eyes are open. She can't go to work anymore, and we don't have money for a doctor or medicine." She held up her quarter again with solemn determination. "This is all I have. Is it enough to buy a new mommy? One who knows how to make my real mommy better?" Matthew felt something crack inside him, a fissure in the careful wall he'd built between his successful present and his painful past. He'd grown up not far from here, in one of Detroit's most troubled neighborhoods. His single mother had worked 3 jobs to keep food on the table, and he remembered all too well what it felt like to watch her collapse from exhaustion, knowing there was nothing a child could do to help. "Lily, I don't think we can buy a mommy here," he said gently. But maybe I can help your real mommy. Would you show me where you live? Suspicion flashed across her young face. My mommy says I shouldn't go with strangers. Your mommy is absolutely right, Matthew agreed. That's very smart of her to teach. Do that? He thought for a moment. Would it be okay if Tyler here comes with us? He gestured to the cashier who had been watching their interaction. And we can bring some medicine and food for your mommy. Lily considered this proposition with the seriousness of a Supreme Court justice. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but I still want to use my quarter. It's a deal, Matthew said, standing up. He turned to Tyler. Can you gather some basic medicines, children's and adult fever reducers, some electrolyte drinks, soup, bread, and fresh fruit? I'll pay for it all. While Tyler assembled the supplies, Matthew made a quick call to reschedule his board meeting. Barbara, his long-suffering executive assistant, sounded genuinely shocked. In 15 years, he had never voluntarily missed a meeting. Is everything all right, Mr. Reynolds? She asked. Yes, Barbara. Something more important has come up. As he said the words, Matthew realized they were true in a way he hadn't felt in years. 20 minutes later, Matthew found himself following Lily through streets that grew progressively more dilapidated. The gleaming skyscrapers of downtown, Detroit receded behind them as they entered a neighborhood of abandoned buildings, empty lots, and homes that seemed to be holding on through sheer determination. Tyler had returned to the store after helping carry supplies to Matthew's Range Rover, and now it was just the two of them, the successful businessman and the child with the quarter. Lily navigated the broken sidewalks with the confidence of familiarity, occasionally looking back to make sure Matthew was still following. She stopped in front of a small house that had once been painted blue but was now a patchwork of peeling paint and exposed wood. The small front yard was neat, despite the poverty evident in the sagging porch and boarded-up side window. This is where we live, Lily said, leading him up cracked concrete steps. The front door stuck and she had to push hard with her shoulder to open it. "Mommy!" she called out. "I brought help." The interior of the house was clean but sparse. A single room served as both living room and kitchen, with a hallway presumably leading to bedrooms. Despite the poverty, Matthew could see efforts to make the space a home, a vase of wildflowers on the chipped kitchen table, carefully mended. Curtains and a small bookshelf filled with well-worn children's books. "Lily? Is that you?" A weak voice came from down the hallway. "Yes, Mommy. I brought someone to help you get better." Matthew followed Lily to a small bedroom, where a woman lay on a mattress on the floor, even in the dim light filtering through a sheet. Hung over the window, he could see she was gravely ill. Her face was flushed with fever, her breathing labored, and her thin frame seemed to disappear beneath a threadbare blanket. Her eyes widened in alarm when she saw Matthew. She tried to sit up, protective instinct overriding her weakness. "Lily, who is this? I've told you never to bring strangers home." "He owns the market, Mommy," Lily explained, as if this made everything clear. "I went to buy a new Mommy because you're sick, but he said he could help you instead." The woman's eyes, bright with fever, fixed on Matthew with a mixture of confusion, suspicion, and desperate hope. "I'm Sarah," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Sarah Wilson. And you are?" Matthew Reynolds stood in the doorway of the tiny bedroom, grocery bags in hand, feeling as if he stood at a crossroads he hadn't seen coming. "I'm Matthew Reynolds," he said, "and I think your daughter just changed my life." Chapter 2. More Than Medicine. Sarah Wilson's suspicious gaze never left Matthew as he set the grocery bags on the floor. Her protective instinct was palpable despite her weakened state. Matthew understood her wariness. A strange man suddenly appearing in her bedroom, brought home by her young daughter, would alarm any parent. "I'm calling a doctor," Matthew said firmly, already pulling out his phone. "We can't afford—" Sarah began, but a coughing fit interrupted her protest. "I'm covering it. No arguments." His tone left no room for debate. The same voice he used in boardrooms when million-dollar decisions were on the line. He stepped into the hallway to make the call. Dr. Emily Chen answered on the second ring. She had been Matthew's personal physician for years, and he trusted her completely. "Emily, I need a house call. It's an emergency." He quickly explained the situation. "Text me the address. I'll be there in 20 minutes, she replied without hesitation. While waiting for the doctor, Matthew unpacked the groceries in the small kitchen. Lily hovered nearby, watching his every move with cautious hope. "Can I help?" she asked. "Absolutely. Can you show me where the cups are?" Lily opened a cabinet and stood on tiptoes to reach a mismatched set of plastic cups. "Mummy's been sick for 12 days, she informed him solemnly. "I've been making her soup, but it doesn't make her better." Matthew felt his heart constrict. 12 days? That's a long time. You've been very brave taking care of her. Lily nodded, accepting the compliment as her due. "I'm the woman of the house when Mummy's sick." That's what she always says. Matthew prepared some electrolyte solution and brought it to Sarah, who had fallen into a restless sleep. He gently woke her. "You need to drink this," he said. "The doctor will be here soon." Sarah's eyes fluttered open, confusion evident before recognition set in. "Why are you doing this?" she asked, her voice raspy. "You don't know us." Before Matthew could answer, the doorbell rang, announcing Dr. Chen's arrival. Lily ran to open the door. Emily Chen entered, carrying her medical bag, her efficient demeanor immediately filling the small house with an air of competence. She nodded briefly to Matthew before focusing entirely on her patient. "Hello, Mrs. Wilson. I'm Dr. Chen. I understand you've been ill for some time." As the doctor examined Sarah, Matthew took Lily to the kitchen and made her a sandwich. The little girl devoured it with an intensity that spoke volumes about how irregular meals had become in this household. "When did you last eat?" he asked casually. Lily thought for a moment, counting on her fingers. "Yesterday morning, Mommy and I shared an apple and some crackers." Matthew struggled to keep his expression neutral. "Would you like another sandwich?" She nodded eagerly, then hesitated. "But we should save food for Mommy." "There's plenty for both of you now," he assured her, already making a second sandwich. Dr. Chen emerged from the bedroom looking concerned. She motioned for Matthew to join her in the narrow hallway, speaking in a low voice. "She has pneumonia, and it's advanced. She needs antibiotics immediately, and honestly, she should be in a hospital. Her oxygen levels are dangerously low." "Will she be okay?" Emily's professional mask slipped slightly. If she'd waited another day or two, but yes, with proper treatment, she should recover. But Matthew, she placed a hand on his arm. "This woman has been working while seriously ill. She's suffering from exhaustion and malnutrition on top of the pneumonia. She told me she lost her job at the cleaning service 2 weeks ago when she became too sick to work. They have no health insurance, no savings, and were facing eviction. At the end of the month." Matthew's jaw tightened. "I'll take care of it." "I know that look," Emily said. "What are you planning?" "Whatever's necessary." He turned to the kitchen where Lily was carefully wrapping half of her second sandwich in a paper towel. "Lily, Dr. Chen needs to talk to your mom about medicine. Could you show me around your house?" The tour took less than 2 minutes. Besides the kitchen, living room, and Sarah's tiny bedroom, there was only Lily's room, a closet-sized space with a small mattress on the floor, a plastic bin of toys, and a few books stacked neatly in the corner. What struck Matthew most was how meticulously clean everything was despite their circumstances. Sarah was clearly doing everything possible to provide a decent home. When they returned, Dr. Chen was packing her bag. "I've given Sarah a first dose of antibiotics and a prescription for more. She absolutely needs rest, proper nutrition, and follow-up care." "I'll make sure she gets it," Matthew promised. After the doctor left, Matthew sat beside Sarah's mattress. Her fever had come down slightly thanks to the medication, and her eyes were clearer. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "People like you don't just show up in neighborhoods like this offering help without wanting something." Matthew considered his answer carefully. "Your daughter came into my store with a quarter, asking to buy a new mommy because hers was sick. It affected me." Sarah closed her eyes, tears slipping down her feverish cheeks. "Oh God, Lily." She took a shuddering breath. "I've tried so hard to protect her, to give her a normal life, and now she's wandering the streets alone because I can't even take care of her properly." She's an extraordinary child, Matthew said. Smart, resilient, loving. You've done an amazing job with her. Sarah looked at him with sudden intensity. You still haven't answered my question. What do you want? Matthew realized he didn't fully know the answer himself. Something about Lily's simple request had cracked open a door he'd kept firmly shut for years. A door to emotions and connections he'd convinced himself were unnecessary in his pursuit of success. Right now, I just want to help you both get back on your feet, he said finally. No strings attached. Sarah's laugh held no humor. I've heard that before. There are always strings. Not this time, Matthew said firmly. I grew up not far from here. My mother worked herself to exhaustion trying to keep us afloat. No one helped us. He paused, surprising himself with this confession. Maybe I'm trying to balance some cosmic scale. Lily appeared in the doorway, clutching her wrapped half sandwich. This is for you, Mommy. For when you're hungry later. Sarah's face softened as she looked at her daughter. Thank you, baby. Matthew stood up. I need to make some calls. Is it okay if I use your living room? When Sarah nodded, he stepped out, already dialing his assistant. Barbara, I need you to clear my schedule for the next few days. Family emergency. It was the first time he'd ever used those words, and they felt strange on his tongue. Also, I need you to find the best home healthcare nurse available and send them to this address immediately. 24-hour care for at least a week. Next, he called his lawyer. James, I need you to stop an eviction and then buy a house. Yes, today. I'll text you the details. By the time he finished his calls, Lily had curled up on the floor beside her mother's mattress, both of them asleep. Matthew covered the child with a thin blanket he found folded at the foot of the bed. Looking at them, so vulnerable, yet so strong in their connection to each other, he felt something shift inside him, something fundamental and irreversible. That evening, when the nurse arrived, a no-nonsense woman named Gloria, who immediately took charge with efficient compassion, Matthew reluctantly prepared to leave. I'll be back tomorrow, he told Sarah. Is there anything specific you need? She studied him for a long moment. Why do I feel like if I say a new furnace or a college fund for Lily, you'd somehow make it happen? Matthew smiled. Because I would. Sarah shook her head, bewilderment clear on her face. Just come back tomorrow. Lily will want to see you. As he said goodnight to the little girl, she pressed her quarter into his hand. You forgot to take this, for helping my mommy. Matthew knelt down to her level. Tell you what, let's save this for something special later, okay? I have a feeling this quarter is going to bring us both good luck. Driving back to his penthouse apartment in downtown Detroit, Matthew felt the weight of the coin in his pocket. A simple piece of metal that somehow felt more valuable than any investment he'd ever made. For the first time in years, he found himself looking forward to tomorrow not for meetings or profit margins, but for the smile of a little girl who had walked into his store looking to buy something no one could sell. When he reached his luxury apartment building, the doorman greeted him with the usual deference. Good evening, Mr. Reynolds. Evening, Joe, Matthew replied, but instead of heading straight for the elevator as he normally would, he paused. Do you have children, Joe? The doorman looked surprised at the personal question. Yes, sir, 3. My youngest just started college this fall. You've done well then, Matthew said. That's something to be proud of. As he rode the elevator to the penthouse, Matthew realized he'd worked alongside Joe for 5 years and never before asked about his family. His world had become so narrow, so focused on acquisition and expansion, that he'd stopped seeing the people around him as anything but functions in his daily life. The elevator doors opened to his immaculate, designer-decorated apartment with its panoramic views of the Detroit skyline. For the first time, the space felt not luxurious but empty, devoid of the simple human warmth he'd felt in Sarah and Lily's humble home. Matthew walked to his bedroom and placed Lily's quarter carefully on his nightstand. Tomorrow would bring challenges. He knew Sarah's pride would make her resistant to help, knew there were practical and logistical hurdles to overcome. But for the first time in longer than he could remember, Matthew Reynolds felt certain he was exactly where he needed to be, doing exactly what he was meant to do. Chapter 3. Building Bridges. Over the next 3 weeks, Matthew established a routine that would have shocked anyone who knew him professionally. Each morning he woke early, handled the most urgent business matters via phone or email, and then drove to Sarah and Lily's house, where he would spend most of the day before returning to his apartment late in the evening to finish any remaining work. The nursing care he'd arranged for Sarah continued, but Matthew found himself wanting to be present regardless. Something about the small house and its occupants pulled at him in a way he couldn't explain, or perhaps didn't want to examine too closely. Sarah's recovery was steady but slow. The pneumonia had taken a severe toll on her already weakened body, and Dr. Chen insisted on complete rest for at least a month. "You must have better things to do than babysit us," Sarah said one afternoon, as Matthew sat beside her bed, working on his laptop while she read a novel he'd brought her. Her tone was light, but the question beneath her words was serious. Matthew looked up from his screen. "Actually, I don't. A successful businessman with no urgent meetings, no deals to close." Her skepticism was evident. "I have an excellent management team," he replied, "and video conferencing is a wonderful invention." Sarah marked her place in the book and set it aside. "Matthew, I appreciate everything you've done. The medical care, the groceries, the rent, but I need to understand why. Normal people don't upend their lives for strangers." Matthew closed his laptop, considering how much to reveal. "When I was 10, my mother got sick. Really sick. She was a single parent, working multiple jobs. We had no family to help, no safety net. She kept working despite having pneumonia, just like you did. The difference is, she didn't make it." Sarah's expression softened. "I'm so sorry. After she died, I bounced around the foster care system until I aged out. I promised myself I'd build something secure, something that could never be taken away." He gestured to the window, toward the invisible empire of stores that bore his name. "I succeeded beyond my wildest dreams, but somewhere along the way I stopped connecting with people. When Lily walked into my store that day..." He paused, searching for the right words. "It was like seeing myself as a child, but this time I was in a position to help." Sarah studied him, her gaze thoughtful. "That explains the first day, maybe the first week. But it's been almost a month, Matthew. You're here every day. You're teaching Lily to read better. You fixed our broken steps. You brought us a new refrigerator, for God's sake." Matthew couldn't deny the truth in her words. What had begun as an impulse to help had evolved into something far more complex. He looked toward the living room where Lily was drawing pictures, her tongue caught between her teeth in concentration. "She's an amazing kid," he said finally. "And you're unlike anyone I've ever met. Being here feels right." "I can't explain it better than that." Before Sarah could respond, Lily bounded into the room holding up a colorful drawing. "Look what I made. It's us." The crayon picture showed 3 stick figures holding hands in front of a house. The smallest figure, clearly Lily, stood between a taller female figure labeled Mommy and a male figure with brown hair labeled Matthew. "It's beautiful, sweetheart," Sarah said, her voice slightly strained. "Why don't you go finish the other picture you were working on?" When Lily left, Sarah turned back to Matthew. "This is what worries me. She's getting attached. She already lost her father. Or rather, he abandoned us when she was 2. I won't let her experience that kind of loss again." "I'm not planning to disappear," Matthew said. "Maybe not intentionally, but you have your own life, Matthew. Eventually, the novelty of playing hero to the poor single mum will wear off, and you'll remember that you have a company to run and probably a girlfriend in your real world." "There's no girlfriend," Matthew said quietly, "and this doesn't feel like playing hero. It feels like finding something I didn't know I was missing." The intensity of his gaze made Sarah look away. "I can't let Lily get hurt, and I can't..." She hesitated. "I can't let myself get hurt either." The vulnerability in her admission hung in the air between them. Matthew reached out slowly and took her hand, half expecting her to pull away. She didn't. "I understand you're scared. I'm a little scared too," he admitted. "But I'm not going anywhere unless you ask me to." That evening, after Lily had gone to bed, Matthew and Sarah sat on the small front porch. The spring air was mild, and the neighborhood was quiet except for distant traffic and the occasional barking dog. "I've been thinking," Matthew said carefully. "This house isn't really adequate for your needs. The plumbing is problematic, the electrical system is outdated, and there's barely enough space for the two of you." Sarah tensed beside him. "We've managed just fine." "I know you have, but you shouldn't have to just manage." He took a deep breath. "I found a house for sale a few blocks from here. It's nothing extravagant. 3 bedrooms, decent yard, good condition. It would give you both some breathing room." "Matthew, hear me out. It could be an investment property. You would be my tenants, paying what you can afford until you're back on your feet. When that happens, we can reassess." Sarah was silent for a long moment. "This is too much. I can't accept something like that." "Why not?" "Because," she struggled to articulate her feelings, "because it creates an imbalance, you giving and giving, me taking and taking. That's not a healthy foundation for whatever this is becoming." Matthew hadn't expected such insight, though perhaps he should have. In the weeks he'd known her, Sarah had repeatedly demonstrated a wisdom that had nothing to do with formal education and everything to do with lived experience. "What if it's not just me giving?" he asked. "What if you're giving me something equally valuable?" She looked at him skeptically. "And what would that be?" "A connection, purpose beyond work, the chance to be part of something real." He gestured to the house behind them. "In the past month, I've felt more alive sitting in your tiny living room playing board games with Lily than I have in years of closing multi-million-dollar deals." Sarah's expression softened. "You really mean that, don't you?" "I do." He hesitated, then pressed on. "There's something else. I've been thinking about your employment situation. When you're fully recovered, would you consider coming to work for me?" She immediately stiffened. "I don't need charity employment." "It's not charity. It's a legitimate business need." Matthew had been planning this carefully. "I've been wanting to start a community outreach program through my stores for years, helping families in need, offering employment training, supporting local schools. I just never had the right person to spearhead it. And you think I'm that person?" "I don't have a college degree, Matthew. I've never run a program like that. But you understand the community and its needs in a way no consultant ever could. You're intelligent, resourceful, and you care about people. The rest can be learned." Sarah looked out at the darkened street, considering his words. "I would need to be able to bring Lily with me sometimes, after school or on days when she's not feeling well." Matthew felt a surge of hope at her tentative engagement with the idea. "We could set up a small play area in your office, and eventually, maybe a daycare center for employees' children." A small smile curved Sarah's lips. "You've really thought this through, haven't you?" "I'm a businessman. Planning is what I do." Sarah turned to face him fully. "If, and this is a big if, I consider your job offer, it would be on the condition that I'm treated like any other employee. No special favors, no exceptions to rules, and I would pay fair market rent for the house." "Of course," Matthew agreed quickly. "And about us," Sarah continued, her voice growing softer. "Whatever is happening between us needs to develop separately from all this. I can't have my personal life and my professional life completely intertwined. It's too risky." Matthew nodded, his heart beating faster at her acknowledgement that there was indeed something developing between them. "Agreed. We take that part slowly, on your terms." Sarah extended her hand formally. "Then we have a tentative deal, Mr. Reynolds." He took her hand, but instead of shaking it, he held it gently. "I hope so, Ms. Wilson." The moment stretched between them, filled with possibility. Finally, Sarah withdrew her hand, but her smile remained. "It's getting late. You should probably head home. I'll see you tomorrow." "We'll be here," she said, and for the first time since they'd met, it sounded like a promise rather than a resignation. As Matthew drove back to his apartment that night, he realized that the path ahead was complicated. His board might question his sudden interest in community outreach. His executive team would certainly raise eyebrows at his continued absence from headquarters. and he had no idea how to navigate the delicate balance of helping Sarah and Lily without overwhelming them or undermining Sarah's fierce independence. Yet despite these challenges, he felt lighter than he had in years. The emptiness that had haunted his success, the sense that accumulating wealth and power wasn't enough, had begun to fill with something far more valuable. When he reached his apartment, he took Lily's quarter from his nightstand and looked at it thoughtfully. Such a small thing to have changed the course of his life so dramatically. On impulse, he found an empty picture frame and placed the quarter inside it, setting it prominently on his bedside table, a reminder of the day. His real life had finally begun. The next morning, Matthew arrived at Sarah and Lily's house earlier than usual. He found them in the kitchen, Lily perched on a chair helping Sarah make pancakes. The domesticity of the scene made his chest tighten with an emotion he wasn't ready to name. "Matthew!" Lily spotted him first, jumping down from her chair and running to hug him around the legs. This had become her standard greeting, and each time it happened he felt something inside him heal just a little bit more. "Good morning, sunshine," he said, ruffling her hair. "Those pancakes smell amazing." Sarah turned from the stove, her color better than it had been since he'd met her. The dark circles under her eyes had faded, and she moved with more energy. "You're just in time for breakfast. Lily insisted we make extra in case you came early." "I had a feeling you would," Lily said with the certainty only a child could possess. "I told Mommy you belong at our breakfast table." Matthew's eyes met Sarah's over Lily's head, and the flash of vulnerability he saw there told him she was thinking the same thing he was. Lily was right. Somehow, against all odds and expectations, he did belong here, with them. Chapter 4. Shadows from the Past. By midsummer, the changes in all their lives were remarkable. Sarah and Lily had moved into the new house, a modest but comfortable 3-bedroom home with a fenced backyard where Lily could play safely. Sarah's health was fully restored, and she had begun working part-time at Reynolds Market corporate headquarters, developing the community outreach program that Matthew had envisioned. Matthew had gradually returned to a more normal work schedule, though he still made time to have dinner with Sarah and Lily almost every evening. Weekends were spent together, often exploring Detroit's parks, museums, or attending community events. To an outside observer, they might have appeared to be a family, though both adults were careful to maintain certain boundaries. The tentative romance that had begun to blossom between Matthew and Sarah remained just that, tentative. There had been no declarations, no formal dating, only a deepening connection that both acknowledged but neither rushed. For Sarah, caution was born of past betrayal. For Matthew, it stemmed from the fear of ruining something precious with impatience. "Higher. Matthew, higher!" Lily squealed as Matthew pushed her on the swing in their backyard one Saturday afternoon. Her laughter carried on the summer breeze, a sound that never failed to make him smile. Sarah watched from the patio, where she was reviewing some proposals for a back-to-school support program for low-income families. The sight of them together, Lily's complete trust and Matthew's gentle attentiveness, created a warmth in her chest that was becoming familiar. Later, as the three of them prepared dinner together in the kitchen, Sarah realized how seamlessly Matthew had integrated into their lives. Lily set the table while Matthew chopped vegetables and Sarah prepared the chicken. The easy domesticity of it all sometimes took her breath away. "Mom called today," Matthew mentioned as they worked. "She wants to know if you two would like to come to Sunday dinner tomorrow." Martha Reynolds, Matthew's adoptive mother, had entered their lives a month earlier. After aging out of foster care, Matthew had been taken in by the Reynolds family, owners of a small corner grocery that would eventually become the first Reynolds Market. Though not legally adopted, Matthew had taken their name and considered them family. When old Mr. Reynolds passed away, Martha had given Matthew her full support as he expanded the business. "I'd like that," Sarah said. "Your mom's pot roast is legendary." "Grandma Martha said she'd teach me to make cookies tomorrow," Lily chimed in. She had immediately taken to calling Martha Grandma, and the older woman had been delighted by the child's affection. As they sat down to eat, the Doorbell rang unexpectedly. Matthew rose. "I'll get it." When he opened the door, he found a man in his mid-30s with disheveled brown hair and bloodshot eyes. The stranger swayed slightly, suggesting he'd been drinking. "Can I help you?" Matthew asked. The man looked Matthew up and down with undisguised hostility. "Who the hell are you? Where's Sarah?" Before Matthew could respond, Sarah appeared behind him, her face draining of color. "Jake," she whispered, her voice tight with shock. "What are you doing here?" Matthew immediately understood. This was Jake Miller, Lily's biological father, the man who had abandoned them years ago. "There you are," Jake slurred, attempting to push past Matthew. "We need to talk." Matthew blocked his path. "I think you should come back when you're sober." Jake's eyes narrowed. "Who is this guy, Sarah?" "Your new rich boyfriend? Moving up in the world, aren't you?" "Mommy?" Lily's small voice came from behind them. "Who's that man?" Sarah turned quickly. "Lily, go to your room, please, right now." Something in her mother's tone made Lily obey immediately, though she cast a worried glance over her shoulder as she went. Jake's expression changed as he caught sight of the child. "Is that my daughter?" "Lily," he called out, but the girl had already disappeared down the hallway. Sarah stepped forward, putting herself between Jake and the doorway to the hall. "You need to leave, Jake. You can't just show up here after 4 years." 4 years? Jake laughed bitterly. "Has it really been that long? Time flies when you're trying to get your life together." He peered past them into the house. "Nice place. A lot nicer than that dump you were in before." "How did you even find us?" Sarah demanded. "Ran into Marcy from your old job. She mentioned you'd gotten real. Lucky. Moved to a nice house, got a cushy office job with some supermarket big shot." His gaze shifted to Matthew. "Guess that would be you." Matthew remained calm. "Mr. Miller, it's clear you're in no condition for a conversation right now. I suggest you come back tomorrow when you've sobered up." Jake's face darkened. "I don't need your permission to see my own kid, buddy. Sarah and I need to talk about some arrangements." "Arrangements?" Sarah repeated, disbelief in her voice. "You haven't sent a single child support payment in 4 years. You haven't called, written, or shown any interest in Lily whatsoever. What possible arrangements could we have to discuss?" Jake's eyes darted between them, calculating. "Well, now that you're doing so well, maybe it's time I took a more active role in my daughter's life." His smile didn't reach his eyes. "Unless, of course, there's some way we could work something out." The implication was clear, and it made Matthew's blood boil. He stepped forward, his voice low and controlled. "I think you should leave now." "Or what?" Jake challenged, but he took an instinctive step back from the quiet authority in Matthew's stance. "Or I'll call the police and report you for trespassing and attempted extortion," Matthew replied evenly. "Your choice." For a tense moment, it seemed Jake might escalate the situation. Then he shrugged with exaggerated casualness. "Fine, I'll go. But this isn't over, Sarah. I have rights." He pointed a finger at her. "She's my daughter, too." With that, he turned and stumbled back, down the walkway toward a battered pickup truck, parked haphazardly at the curb. Matthew watched until he drove away, then closed the door firmly. Sarah stood frozen in the entryway, her face ashen. "I need to check on Lily," she said, her voice barely audible. Matthew followed her to Lily's room, where they found the little girl sitting on her bed, clutching her favorite stuffed rabbit. She looked up as they entered, her eyes wide and questioning. "Who was that man?" she asked. He was loud. Sarah sat beside her daughter, pulling her close. "That was someone. Mommy used to know. He's gone now." Lily seemed to accept this, but her next question pierced Matthew's heart. "Is he going to make us leave our new house? Is he going to make Matthew go away?" "No, sweetheart," Sarah assured her, though Matthew could hear the uncertainty beneath her confident tone. "Nobody's going to make us leave, and Matthew isn't going anywhere." "Promise." Lily looked at them both. "Promise," Matthew said firmly, sitting on Lily's other side. After they had calmed Lily and returned to their interrupted dinner, a heavy silence hung over the table. The easy domesticity of earlier had been shattered by Jake's appearance. Later, after Lily was asleep, Sarah and Matthew sat on the back porch, the summer night warm around them. "He's going to come back," Sarah said finally, her voice hollow. "I know Jake. Now that he knows we're doing better, he'll see us as a resource to exploit." Matthew chose his words carefully. "Does he have any legal claim to Lily?" Sarah stared into the darkness of the yard. "He's on her birth certificate. He's never paid child support, never been involved, but legally, yes, he's her father." "Has he ever been abusive? Is there anything in his past that would make him an unfit parent in the eyes of the court?" Sarah wrapped her arms around herself, though the night wasn't cold. "He was never physically abusive, but he's an alcoholic. He would disappear for days, then come back full of promises he never kept. When I got pregnant, he seemed to try for a while, but by the time Lily was 2, he was gone. Said he wasn't cut out for fatherhood." She turned to Matthew, fear evident in her eyes. "But none of that might matter. I can't afford a protracted legal battle, and if he decides to fight for custody just to spite me, we'll get the best family lawyer in Michigan," Matthew said without hesitation. Sarah shook her head. "Matthew, I can't ask you to do that." "You're not asking, I'm offering." He moved closer, taking her hands in his. "Sarah, listen to me. What we have, you, me, Lily, it matters to me. More than anything has in a very long time. I won't let Jake Miller destroy that out of spite or greed." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. "But what if he has rights we can't overcome? What if—" "Then we'll face it together," Matthew interrupted gently. "Whatever happens, you're not alone anymore." Sarah looked at their joined hands, then up at Matthew's face. The certainty she saw there seemed to steady her. "Okay," she whispered, "together." The next morning, Matthew called James Harrison, the head of legal affairs for Reynolds Market and his personal attorney. After explaining the situation, he asked for a recommendation for the best family law specialist in Detroit. Actually, James said, "My sister-in-law, Diane, specializes in family law. She's one of the top custody attorneys in the state. I can set up a meeting for tomorrow if you'd like." "That would be perfect. Thank you, James." When he told Sarah about the appointment, she nodded gratefully but remained quiet, worry etched across her features. Lily, sensing the tension despite their efforts to shield her, was unusually subdued throughout the day. Sunday dinner at Martha Reynolds' house provided a welcome distraction. Martha, a warm, no-nonsense woman in her 70s, had taken to Sarah and Lily immediately upon meeting them. Her modest home in a middle-class suburb was filled with photos of Matthew at various ages, a testament to the love she had for the boy she'd taken in as a teenager. "Something's wrong," Martha said quietly to Matthew as they stood in the kitchen while Sarah helped Lily wash her hands in the bathroom. "I can see it in both your faces." Matthew shouldn't have been surprised. Martha had always been perceptive. He briefly explained about Jake's appearance. Martha's expression hardened. Men like that, they only want what others have built. They don't care about the child, only what they can get. "I know," Matthew agreed. "I'm taking them to see a lawyer tomorrow." Martha patted his arm. "You're doing right by them, Matthew. I'm proud of you." She hesitated, then added, "You love them, don't you? Both of them?" The question caught him off guard, though it shouldn't. Have? The answer rose from somewhere deep inside him, a truth he had been feeling but hadn't yet articulated even to himself. "Yes," he said simply, "I do." Martha nodded, satisfaction in her eyes. "Then you fight for them. With everything you've got." The rest of the evening passed pleasantly, with Lily and Martha making cookies as promised, and the adults making a deliberate effort to focus on the present moment rather than the uncertainty that awaited them. As they drove home, Lily fell, asleep in the back seat, clutching the container of cookies she'd made with Grandma Martha. "She loves your mother," Sarah observed softly. "The feeling is mutual," Matthew replied. "Mom hasn't been this animated in years." Sarah was quiet for a moment, then said, "I've been thinking, if Jake is serious about pursuing custody, even partial custody, it would devastate Lily. She doesn't even remember him. Diane will help us. From what James said, she's exceptionally good at what she does." But good lawyers can't always overcome biological rights, Sarah pointed out. Courts tend to favor reunification with birth parents, even when it's not in the child's best interest. Matthew glanced at her, noting the determined set of her jaw. You have an idea. Sarah took a deep breath. What if there was another father figure in Lily's life, someone who could petition for adoption? The implication hung in the air between them. Matthew's heart raced as he processed what Sarah was suggesting. Are you asking what I think you're asking? He said carefully. Sarah looked back at her sleeping daughter, then met Matthew's gaze directly. I'm asking if you would consider legally adopting Lily, if you want to, if that's something you could see yourself doing. The question was momentous, life-changing for all of them, yet Matthew found he didn't need time to consider his answer. Yes, he said, the word coming easily. I would be honored to adopt. Lily, but Sarah, he added, this isn't just about fighting Jake, you know that, right? Sarah nodded, emotion making her voice husky. I know, it's about making official what's already in our hearts. When they arrived home, Matthew carried the sleeping Lily to her bedroom while Sarah turned down the covers. As they tucked her in together, the little girl stirred briefly. Good night, Mommy, she murmured. Good night, Daddy. Both adults froze, looking at each other over Lily's bed. She had never called Matthew Daddy before. She's half asleep, Sarah whispered. She probably doesn't even realize what she said. But the word echoed in Matthew's mind as they quietly left the room. Daddy. It felt right in a way he couldn't articulate, as if a piece of himself he hadn't known was missing had suddenly clicked into place. In the hallway, Sarah stopped and turned to him. Matthew, about what I said in the car. He gently placed a finger over her lips. I meant what I said. But there's something else we need to discuss. Sarah looked up at him questioningly. If I'm going to adopt Lily, Matthew said softly, I think we should talk about us too, about what we want our family to look like. Sarah's breath caught. What are you saying? Matthew took her hands in his. I'm saying that I love you, Sarah Wilson, you and Lily both, and I hope you might feel the same way about me. Tears filled Sarah's eyes, but she was smiling. We do, she whispered. We absolutely do. As Matthew pulled her into his arms, he knew that whatever challenges Jake Miller might bring, they would face them together, as a family. The path ahead might not be easy, but for the first time it was abundantly clear. Chapter 5. The Battle Begins. The law offices of Harrison & Associates occupied the 15th floor of a sleek downtown Detroit office building. Matthew guided Sarah through the lobby with a gentle hand at the small of her back, both of them tense with anticipation. They had arranged for Lily to spend the day with Martha, shielding her from the legal discussions that would determine her future. Diane Harrison greeted them warmly, ushering them into a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Detroit River. In her mid-40s, with a sleek bob and sharp eyes that missed nothing, she exuded competence and confidence, exactly what they needed. James briefed me on your situation, she began once they were seated. But I'd like to hear everything from the beginning in your own words. For the next hour, Sarah detailed her history with Jake, their brief relationship, his abandonment, his complete absence from Lily's life for the past 4 years, and his sudden reappearance. Matthew described their current family dynamic and his desire to adopt Lily. Diane took meticulous notes, occasionally asking clarifying questions. When they finished, she set down her pen and looked at them directly. I'll be straight with you, she said. Biological parents have significant rights, even those who have been absent. The courts generally favor maintaining connections with birth parents when possible. Sarah's face fell, but Diane held up a hand. However, in this case, we have several factors in our favor. Mr. Miller's complete absence for 4 years, his failure to provide any financial support, and what appears to be purely financial motivation for his sudden interest. She tapped her pen thoughtfully. Has he made any explicit demands for money? Not yet, Matthew replied, but the implication was clear. If he does, document it. Record calls if you can. Michigan is a one-party. Consent state for recordings. Diane opened a folder on her desk. Now about the adoption. Mr. Reynolds, your relationship with Ms. Wilson and Lily gives us a strong case for you as an adoptive parent. The fact that Lily already views you as a father figure is significant. She called me Daddy for the first time last night, Matthew said, unable to keep the emotion from his voice. Diane smiled. That's helpful. Courts prioritize the child's best interests above all else, and stable, loving relationships are paramount. She turned to a new page in her notes. Now here's my proposed strategy. First, we file for full legal custody for Sarah with a request to terminate Jake's parental rights based on abandonment. Simultaneously, we begin the adoption process. For Matthew, we'll need character references, home study reports, and documentation of your relationship with Lily. What about us? Sarah asked hesitantly. Matthew and I aren't married. It would strengthen the case if you were, Diane admitted, but it's not essential. Many adoptions involve unmarried partners, though I should mention, she added with professional detachment, that courts do look favorably on traditional family structures. Matthew and Sarah exchanged a glance laden with unspoken thoughts. One more thing, Diane continued. I suggest we move quickly. If Jake decides to petition for custody or visitation rights, we want to be ahead of him with our filings. By the time they left the law office, they had a clear plan and a sense of cautious optimism. Diane would begin the necessary paperwork immediately, and they had a list of documentation to gather. What are you thinking? Matthew asked as they walked to his car. Sarah was quiet for a moment. I'm thinking about what Diane said, about marriage strengthening our case. Matthew stopped walking and turned to face her. Sarah, I don't want you to feel pressured into marriage because of Jake. When we get married, if we get married, it should be because it's what we both want, not because of legal strategy. She looked up at him, a small smile playing at her lips. When, not if. He felt a flush of warmth at being so transparent. I think you know how I feel about you. About us. I do, she said softly. She reached for his hand. And you're right. Marriage shouldn't be a legal tactic. But Matthew, she hesitated, I also don't want to lose Lily because we waited too long to formalize what we already feel. We won't lose her, Matthew promised, though he knew it wasn't entirely in his power to guarantee. We'll do whatever it takes. That evening, when they picked up Lily from Martha's house, they found the little girl had spent the day baking cookies and learning to knit. She proudly displayed a misshapen rectangle of blue yarn that was allegedly a potholder. Grandma Martha says I'm a natural, she declared, beaming. Martha winked at them over the child's head. She's a quick study, this one. Gets that from her mother, I'd wager. As they prepared to leave, Martha pulled Matthew aside. How did it go with the lawyer? We have a good strategy, he said, but it's going to be a battle. Martha nodded. Firmly? Anything you need, you just say the word. That little girl deserves the best, and so does Sarah. On the drive home, Lily chatted happily about her day, unaware of the concerns weighing on the adults. When they arrived, she ran ahead to the front door, then stopped abruptly. Mommy? Matthew? Who's that man? Jake Miller was sitting on their front steps, looking considerably more sober than he had the previous day. He stood as they approached, hands shoved in his pockets in a posture of forced casualness. Hello, Sarah, he said, then nodded stiffly to Matthew. His gaze lingered on Lily. Hi there, Lily. Do you remember me? Lily pressed against Sarah's side, shaking her head. I'm your dad, Jake said, a note of reproach in his voice. Your real dad. Matthew felt a surge of protective anger, but Sarah squeezed his arm in warning. This confrontation needed to be handled carefully. Jake, we weren't expecting you, Sarah said neutrally. Lily, sweetheart, why don't you go inside and get started on your homework? We'll be right in. I want to stay with you, Lily whispered, eyeing Jake with apprehension. It's okay, Princess, Matthew assured her. We'll just be a minute. Reluctantly, Lily took the house key from Sarah and went inside, casting worried glances over her shoulder. Once she was out of earshot, Sarah turned to Jake. What do you want? Jake's attempt at a friendly expression faltered. I want to see my daughter, get to know her again. Is that so wrong? Again? Sarah's voice was sharp. You never knew her in the first place. You left when she was 2. She has no memory of you. Jake shifted uncomfortably. I made mistakes. I'm trying to make things right. Why now? Matthew asked quietly. Why after 4 years of complete silence? Jake's eyes narrowed. I don't see how that's any of your business, buddy. Anything that affects Lily is my business, Matthew replied evenly. Yeah, I bet it is, Jake sneered. Playing daddy to my kid, moving them into a nice house. What's your angle, huh? Sarah must be real grateful. Sarah stepped forward, anger overcoming her usual caution. That's enough, Jake. Matthew has been more of a father to Lily in a few months than you've been in her entire life. Jake's face darkened. Look, I didn't come here to fight. I want visitation with my daughter. I have rights. Rights you abandoned years ago, Sarah retorted. Maybe so, but they're still mine legally, Jake countered. Unless you want to go to court and spend a fortune fighting me, I suggest we work something out. There it was, the veiled threat. So the implication that this was about leverage, not fatherhood. What exactly are you suggesting? Matthew asked, his voice controlled despite his rising anger. Jake shrugged. I'm reasonable. Maybe some regular visits with Lily. Maybe some financial support to help me get back on my feet so I can be a proper father to her. You're asking for money, Sarah said flatly. I'm asking for help to be in my daughter's life, Jake corrected, though his eyes gave him away. But if you'd rather fight this in court. We're already prepared for that, Matthew informed him. We met with our attorney today. Surprise flickered across Jake's face, quickly replaced by calculation. Lawyers are expensive, and custody. Battles get ugly. Do you really want to put Lily through that? Do you? Sarah challenged. Because if you actually cared about her well-being, you'd know that disrupting her life now would only hurt her. Jake's jaw tightened. I see how it is. You've got your rich boyfriend now, so you think you can just erase me from Lily's life. You erased yourself, Jake, Sarah said quietly. 4 years ago. A tense silence fell between them. Finally, Jake took a step back. This isn't over, I'll be in touch. He looked toward the house. Tell Lily her dad will see her soon. As Jake walked away, Sarah's composure finally cracked. She trembled slightly, and Matthew put his arm around her shoulders. He's going to fight us, she whispered. Then we'll fight back, Matthew said firmly. Inside, they found Lily sitting at the kitchen table, her homework untouched in front of her. Her small face was creased with worry. Is that man really my dad? She asked as they entered. Sarah sat beside her, daughter taking her small hands. Yes, honey, that's your biological father, but he hasn't been part of our lives for a very long time. He said he's my real dad, Lily persisted, looking confused. But I thought... She glanced at Matthew, then back at Sarah. I thought Matthew was going to be my dad now. Matthew's heart clenched at the uncertainty in her voice. He knelt beside her chair. Lily, I want very much to be your dad, more than anything. Then why is that other man saying he's my dad too? Can I have 2 dads? Sarah and Matthew exchanged glances, unsure how to explain the complicated situation to a 6-year-old. Sometimes families are complicated, Sarah began carefully. Jake, that man, is the person who helped create you. But being a real father means being there every day, helping with homework, tucking you in at night, loving you and taking care of you. Like Matthew does, Lily said with simple clarity. Like Matthew does, Sarah agreed, her voice thick with emotion. Lily seemed to consider this, her young brow furrowed in concentration. I don't want that other man to be my dad. He looks scary and he made you and Matthew sad. Oh, sweetheart, Sarah pulled her daughter close. You don't need to worry about any of this. Matthew and I will handle everything. Promise? We promise, they said in unison. Later that night, after Lily was asleep, Sarah and Matthew sat on the couch reviewing the documentation Diane had requested. Sarah's hands shook slightly as she sorted through years of medical records, school enrollment forms, and financial statements proving she had been Lily's sole support. I can't believe he's doing this, she said, frustration evident in her voice. He doesn't care about Lily. He just sees an opportunity to extort money. Matthew set aside the papers he was organizing. Diane will expose his motives. We have truth on our side. Sometimes that's not enough, Sarah said bleakly. Jake can be charming when he wants to be. If he decides to clean up his act, get a steady job, show up for court appearances looking respectable. Sarah. Matthew took her hands, stilling their nervous movement. We will get through this together. She met his gaze, vulnerability plain on her face. I've been thinking about what Diane said, about marriage strengthening our case. Matthew's pulse quickened. I meant what I said earlier. I don't want you to feel pressured. I don't, Sarah said softly. The truth is, I've been falling in love with you. Since that first day you showed up at our door with groceries and determination. Lily adores you. You've become essential to us both. She took a deep breath. So if you were thinking of asking a certain question sometime soon, my answer would be yes. Joy bloomed in Matthew's chest, so intense it was almost painful. Sarah, Wilson, are you proposing to me? A smile broke through her worry. I suppose I am. Is that all right? Matthew laughed, pulling her into his arms. More than all right. But I insist on doing this properly. He shifted to one knee before her, still, holding her hands. Sarah Wilson, will you marry me? Not for legal strategy, not because of Jake, but because I love you and Lily more than I ever thought possible, and I want to spend the rest of my life as part of this family we've created. Tears spilled down Sarah's cheeks as she nodded. Yes, Matthew Reynolds, yes I will. As they sealed the promise with a kiss, the weight of Jake's threats seemed to lighten, if only temporarily. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them as a family bonded not by blood or legal documents, but by choice and love. The next morning, Matthew called Diane with their decision. She was cautiously optimistic about how it would strengthen their case, but warned them that Jake's threat of a custody battle remained serious. I've begun the paperwork for terminating his parental rights, she explained, but he's already retained counsel, a Thomas Blackwell. He's known for aggressive tactics in family court. What kind of tactics? Sarah asked, tension evident in her voice. Character assassination mainly. He'll dig into your past, your personal life, your fitness as a mother. It's unpleasant, but I want you to be prepared. After hanging up, Sarah paced the kitchen. He'll use everything against me. The times we had to move because I couldn't make rent, the period when I worked 2 jobs and had to leave Lily with neighbors, the winter we lost heat because I couldn't pay the bill. Matthew stopped her, pacing, hands gentle on her shoulders. That's not failure, Sarah. That's a mother doing everything humanly possible to provide for her child, despite impossible circumstances. Any reasonable judge will see that. She leaned into him, drawing strength from his certainty. I hope you're right. That afternoon they took Lily to Martha's house again to share their engagement news. The older woman embraced them both, joy radiating from her weathered face. It's about time, she declared. I knew from the first time I saw you 3 together that you were meant to be a family. Lily was ecstatic, immediately launching into plans for her role as flower girl. Can I wear a princess dress? Can we have chocolate cake? Will we live in a bigger house after? Matthew laughed, lifting her into his arms. We can have whatever kind of cake you want, princess, but I think our house is perfect just the way it is. As they drove home, Lily chattering excitedly in the back seat about wedding plans, Matthew reached for Sarah's hand. She gave him a smile that contained both joy and determination. They were building something precious together, something worth fighting for, and fight they would. Chapter 6. Truth in the Courtroom. The Wayne County Family Court building stood imposing against the autumn sky, its grey stone facade a fitting backdrop for the gravity of the decisions made within its walls. Matthew adjusted his tie nervously as he and Sarah approached the entrance, both dressed in conservative attire that Diane had advised would make a good impression. Remember, Diane said, meeting them at the courthouse steps, Judge Thompson has a reputation for being child-focused. She'll consider Lily's best interests above all else, which works in our favor. The past 6 weeks had been a whirlwind. Matthew and Sarah had married in a small, intimate ceremony at Martha's house, with only Lily, Martha, and a few close friends in attendance. The timing was strategic, recommended by Diane, but the ceremony itself had been genuine and deeply emotional. Lily had indeed worn a princess dress, Martha had baked a chocolate cake, and Sarah had never looked more beautiful than when she promised to build a life with Matthew. The honeymoon had consisted of a single weekend at a lakeside cabin with Lily happily included. They had decided that separating from her, even briefly, might cause unnecessary anxiety given Jake's continued presence on the periphery of their lives. In the weeks leading up to the hearing, Jake had made several attempts to see Lily, each time showing up unannounced. Under Diane's guidance, they had allowed brief supervised visits in their home, painful experiences that left Lily confused and Sarah anxious. Jake had been awkward with his daughter, bringing inappropriate gifts and making promises that made Sarah cringe. Lily remained wary of him, responding to his overtures with polite distance that broke Sarah's heart, even as it relieved her. Now, as they entered the courtroom, they saw Jake already seated at the opposite table with his attorney, Thomas Blackwell, a sharp-featured man in an expensive suit who exuded aggressive confidence. Jake had made an effort with his appearance. Wearing what appeared to be a new dress shirt and slacks, his hair neatly combed, he nodded stiffly in their direction. "All rise for the Honorable Judge Harriet Thompson," the bailiff announced. Judge Thompson, a dignified black woman in her 60s with silver-streaked hair and penetrating eyes, took her seat and reviewed the documents before her. "We are here in the matter of custody and parental rights regarding Lily Miller, minor child. I understand there are competing petitions, one from the biological father seeking visitation and partial custody, and one from the mother and her husband seeking termination of the biological father's rights and step-parent adoption." She looked up, scanning the courtroom. "Before we begin, I want to make something clear. This court's sole concern is the welfare of the child. I'm not interested in adult grievances or vendettas. Is that understood?" Both attorneys nodded respectfully. "Good. Mr. Blackwell, as you are petitioning for a change to the status quo, you may begin." Blackwell rose smoothly. "Thank you, Your Honor. We are here today because my client, Jake Miller, has been systematically prevented from having a relationship with his biological daughter. Yes, Mr. Miller made mistakes in the past. He left when the pressures of parenthood and financial hardship became overwhelming. He has acknowledged those mistakes and is committed to making amends." Sarah tensed beside Matthew as Blackwell continued. "What we have here is a case of economic discrimination. When Mr. Miller was struggling financially, Ms. Wilson now, Mrs. Reynolds, was content to raise their child alone. But now that she has married into wealth, she wishes to erase my client from his daughter's life entirely, replacing him with her new husband." Matthew felt a surge of anger at this mischaracterization, but kept his expression neutral as Diane had coached. "Mr. Miller is not seeking full custody. He simply wants the opportunity to know his daughter, to be part of her life, to fulfill his role as her father, a role that is his by natural and legal right. We ask the court to grant reasonable visitation and partial custody to allow this father-daughter relationship to develop." When Blackwell finished, Diane rose with calm authority. "Your Honor, this case is not about economic discrimination or preventing a father from knowing his child. It is about protecting a 6-year-old girl from disruption and potential abandonment by someone who has shown no interest in her welfare for 4 years." She walked to the evidence table and lifted a thick folder. "I have here documentation of Jake Miller's complete absence from his daughter's life. No child support payments, no birthday cards, no phone calls, no inquiries about her health, education, or well-being. For 4 years, Mr. Miller made no effort whatsoever to be part of Lily's life." Diane placed the folder before the judge. "Additionally, we have evidence suggesting Mr. Miller's sudden interest coincides not with a genuine desire for fatherhood, but with Sarah Wilson's improved financial circumstances through her marriage to Matthew Reynolds." She presented transcripts of conversations and text messages in which Jake had hinted at financial arrangements that might reduce his custody demands. Your Honor, Mr. Miller's motivations are transparently self-serving. The testimonies began with character witnesses for both sides. Jake's boss at the auto repair shop testified to his recent reliability as an employee. A cousin spoke about Jake's desire to turn his life around. The testimonies felt rehearsed to Matthew, and he suspected Jake had been coached extensively by Blackwell. When it was their turn, Martha spoke eloquently about the loving family unit she had observed, bringing tears to Sarah's eyes with her description of Matthew's natural fatherly care for Lily. Dr. Chen testified about Sarah's dedication as a mother, even when severely ill. Colleagues from Reynolds Market described Sarah's professionalism and Matthew's transformation since meeting Sarah and Lily, how he had become more compassionate, more engaged, more human. Throughout the proceedings, Matthew found himself watching the judge. Her expression remained inscrutable, but her questions were incisive, cutting through attempts at emotional manipulation from either side. Then came the moment they had been dreading. Blackwell called Sarah to the stand. "Mrs. Reynolds, or should I say Mrs. Miller?" Blackwell began. "Objection," Diane interjected. "Ms. Wilson was never married to Mr. Miller." "Sustained," Judge Thompson said. "Please refer to the witness appropriately, Counselor." Blackwell's smile tightened. "Mrs. Reynolds, during the period when you were living with Mr. Miller, isn't it true that you worked night shifts, leaving him as Lily's primary caregiver?" Sarah's voice was steady. "For approximately 3 months when Lily was an infant, yes. I worked nights while Jake watched her. Then he would go to work during the day while I cared for her. And isn't it true that you moved several times during Lily's early years, creating instability in her home environment?" "We moved twice because I couldn't afford rent after Jake left us. I was doing everything possible to keep a roof over my daughter's head as a single mother with no support." Blackwell's questioning continued in this vein, attempting to paint Sarah as unstable, financially irresponsible, and willing to trade up when a wealthier option presented itself. Through it all, Sarah remained composed, answering honestly but refusing to be baited into emotional outbursts. When Matthew's turn came, Blackwell's approach shifted to insinuation. "Mr. Reynolds, isn't it convenient that you've suddenly developed paternal feelings for Lily, just as her biological father has reappeared?" "There's nothing sudden about my feelings for Lily," Matthew replied calmly. "I've been part of her daily life for nearly 8 months now. I help with her homework, attend her school events, comfort her when she's upset, and celebrate her successes. And isn't it true that your relationship with Sarah Wilson began while she was vulnerable, ill, impoverished, desperate for help?" Matthew felt his jaw tighten, but maintained his composure. "My relationship with Sarah developed gradually, built on mutual respect and shared values. We became a family long before we became a couple." After a grueling day of testimony, Judge Thompson called for the most important witness, Lily herself. This would be conducted in her chambers, with only the judge, a court-appointed child advocate, and Lily present. The arrangement had been made to spare the child the trauma of testifying in open court. As Lily was led away by the child advocate, she looked back at Sarah and Matthew with worried eyes. Sarah blew her a kiss, and Matthew gave her an encouraging thumbs up. "She'll be fine," Diane assured them. "Judge Thompson is excellent with children, and the advocate will make sure she's not pressured." The wait seemed interminable. Sarah clutched Matthew's hand so tightly her knuckles went white. Across the aisle, Jake fidgeted nervously, conferring with Blackwell in hushed tones. After nearly 40 minutes, Lily emerged from the judge's chambers looking relieved. The child advocate brought her to Sarah and Matthew, and Lily immediately climbed into Sarah's lap. "You did great, sweetheart," Sarah whispered, smoothing her daughter's hair. "The judge was nice," Lily said. "She had a fish tank in her office, and let me feed the fish." Judge Thompson returned to the bench, her expression solemn. "I've heard all the testimony, reviewed all the evidence, and spoken with Lily. I'm prepared to render my decision." The courtroom fell silent. In matters of custody, this court is guided by one principle above all others: the best interest of the child. This is not about parental rights, adult desires, or even fairness to the parents. It is solely about What will provide Lily Miller with the most stable, loving, and nurturing environment? She turned her gaze to Jake. Mr. Miller, while I acknowledge your biological connection to Lily and your stated desire to reconnect with her, I cannot ignore the 4-year absence from her life. Parenthood is not something you can abandon and reclaim at will. It requires consistent presence, sacrifice, and unconditional love. Jake's face flushed, but he remained silent. Furthermore, the judge continued, I find the timing of your renewed interest concerning, particularly in light of evidence suggesting financial motives. She shifted her attention to Sarah and Matthew. Mrs. and Mr. Reynolds, the court acknowledges the stable, loving home you have created for Lily. It is clear from all testimony, and most importantly, from Lily herself, that she is thriving in your care. Judge Thompson folded her hands. Therefore, it is the decision of this court to grant full legal and physical custody of Lily Miller to Sarah Reynolds, with no visitation rights granted to Jake Miller at this time. Sarah gasped softly, squeezing Matthew's hand. Furthermore, the judge continued, based on the evidence of abandonment and the close bond that has formed between Lily and her stepfather, I am granting the petition to terminate Jake Miller's parental rights and approving Matthew Reynolds' adoption of Lily, pending the standard home study and final paperwork. Relief washed over Matthew in a dizzying wave. Beside him, Sarah was quietly crying. Joy and vindication mingled in her tears. Across the aisle, Jake stood abruptly, his face contorted with anger. This is bullshit. She's my daughter. Mr. Miller, Judge Thompson's voice cut through his outburst like steel. Control yourself, or you will be held in contempt. Blackwell placed a restraining hand on Jake's arm, murmuring urgently. After a tense moment, Jake shook him off and stormed out of the courtroom. This court is adjourned, Judge Thompson declared, bringing down her gavel with finality. Outside the courthouse, the autumn air felt crisp with possibility. Lily, who had been waiting with Martha in the hallway, ran to them. What happened? Did we win? Matthew lifted her into his arms, his heart so full it might burst. Yes, Princess, we won. The judge said we can be a family forever, officially. Lily's face lit up. You mean you're really going to be my daddy now? For real? For real, Matthew confirmed, his voice thick with emotion. If that's what you want. It's what I wanted when I went to your store that day, Lily said, with the simple wisdom of childhood. I just didn't know it would be you. Sarah joined their embrace, and for a moment the three of them stood united against the world, a family forged not by blood but by something far stronger, choice, commitment, and unconditional love. They walked to the car. Diane caught up with them. Congratulations, she said warmly. Judge Thompson's decision was clear and comprehensive. It would be very difficult to overturn on appeal, though Blackwell might try. Do you think Jake will appeal? Sarah asked, worry creasing her brow. Diane shook her head. Based on his reaction, I think he might be angry enough to consider it, but appeals are expensive and time-consuming. My guess is that once the anger fades, he'll move on. She smiled at Lily, who was skipping ahead with Martha. She's lucky to have you both. That evening, they celebrated with a dinner at Martha's house. The atmosphere was festive, filled with laughter and plans for the future. After dinner, while Sarah helped Martha with dessert, Matthew found himself alone with Lily in the living room. She climbed onto his lap, something she had done countless times before, but now it felt different. Official, permanent, sealed by law as well as love. I have something for you, he said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out the quarter, Lily's quarter, now encased in a small clear acrylic cube with a base. Engraved on the base were the words, "The day our family began." Lily took it reverently. My quarter. You kept it all this time. It's the most valuable coin in the world to me, Matthew said. It brought me to you and your mum. It helped me find my family. Lily studied the memento, then looked up at Matthew with eyes so like Sarah's. I'm glad I tried to buy a mommy that day, she said solemnly, even though what I got was a daddy instead. Matthew hugged her close, overwhelmed by the journey. That had brought them to this moment. From a little girl with a coin to a family bound by law and love, it was more than he had ever dared to hope for. When Sarah and Martha returned with slices of celebratory cake, they found Matthew and Lily engaged in an intense discussion about whether unicorns could beat dragons in a race. Sarah paused in the doorway, taking in the scene, her daughter and her husband already deep in the comfortable rhythm of father and child, as if they had always been meant to find each other. "Everything okay?" Matthew asked, noticing her, watching them. Sarah smiled, feeling a completeness she had never thought possible. "Everything is perfect," she said, and for the first time in a very long time, she believed it absolutely. Chapter 7. The Coin's Promise. 6 months had passed since the courtroom victory, and spring had returned to Detroit, bringing with it new beginnings. The final adoption papers had been signed 2 months ago, making official what their hearts had known for nearly a year. Lily was a Reynolds, in name and in love. Matthew stood in the parking lot of his newest store, the grand opening banner fluttering in the breeze. Reynolds Market Hope was emblazoned across the front of the building in bold, welcoming letters. This store, unlike his others, was located in the heart of the neighborhood where Sarah and Lily had once struggled, where many families still faced the same challenges they had overcome. "Nervous?" Sarah asked, joining him. She looked professional and confident in a tailored blue dress. Her role as Director of Community Outreach now expanded to include oversight of the special programs at this flagship location. "A little," Matthew admitted. "This one matters more than all the others combined." Sarah squeezed his hand. "It's going to be amazing. You've thought of everything." Indeed, this store was different from any other in the Reynolds Market chain. Beyond the grocery section, it housed a free medical clinic staffed by volunteer physicians, including Dr. Chen, a job training center, a subsidized childcare facility for employees and customers, and a resource center to help families navigate social services. The staff had been hired primarily from the surrounding community, with an emphasis on single parents and those seeking second chances. "Where's our girl?" Matthew asked, scanning the growing crowd. "With your mother, organizing the children's area for the ribbon cutting." Matthew checked his watch. "We should head inside. The ceremony starts in 20 minutes. As they walked through the main entrance, employees greeted them warmly. Many had come to know their story over the past months as the store took shape. For some, especially those who had faced similar struggles to Sarah's, the Reynolds family represented hope that life could change for the better. The store was magnificent, bright, welcoming, with wide aisles and thoughtful touches that made shopping with children easier. Prices were kept deliberately accessible, with staple items subsidized to ensure healthy options were within reach for all families. They found Lily in the children's play area adjacent to the cafe, solemnly instructing Martha on the proper arrangement of stuffed animals. At 7 years old now, she had grown taller and more confident, though she retained the compassionate spirit that had led her to seek a mommy with her quarter all those months ago. "Daddy! Mom! Doesn't it look great?" Lily called out. When she spotted them, the word daddy still gave Matthew a thrill every time he heard it. "It looks perfect, Princess," he assured her, lifting her for a quick hug. "Are you ready for your big moment?" Lily nodded seriously. "I practiced my speech all morning with Grandma Martha." Martha winked at them. "She's a natural public speaker. Gets that from her father, I'd say." The comment, so casually acknowledging Matthew as Lily's father, warmed his heart. In the Reynolds family, adoption wasn't a secondary form of parenthood. It was simply another way that families were made. As the opening ceremony approached, the store filled with community members, media representatives, and local officials. Matthew had specifically invited families from the neighborhood's homeless, shelter and transitional housing programs, arranging transportation, and ensuring they would receive gift cards and food baskets as part of the event. The mayor of Detroit arrived, followed by several city council members and community leaders. This store opening was more than a business expansion. It represented investment in a neighborhood that had seen too many businesses leave and too few arrive. At precisely noon, Matthew took his place at the podium, set up near the main entrance. Sarah and Lily stood beside him, with Martha beaming, proudly from the front row. "Good afternoon and thank you all for being here," Matthew began. "Today marks the opening of not just a store, but the fulfillment of a promise that began with a little girl and a quarter." He glanced at Lily, who smiled up at him. "Many of you know our family's story. Almost exactly 1 year ago, my daughter Lily walked into Reynolds Market number 7 with a single coin, asking to buy something no store could sell. What she found instead, what we all found, was something far more precious, a family formed by choice, by love, and by the belief that we belong together." Matthew gestured to the store around them. "This market, which we've named Hope, is dedicated to the idea that everyone deserves a chance at a better life. Everyone deserves to be seen, to be valued, to be supported through difficult times." He outlined the special features of the store, the clinic, the job training center, the childcare facility, explaining how each addressed needs he and Sarah had identified in the community. "But this is just the beginning," Matthew continued. "Today I'm pleased to announce the formation of the Lily's Quarter Foundation, a non-profit organization dedicated to supporting single parents and vulnerable children throughout Detroit. Sarah will serve as executive director, bringing her first-hand experience and compassion to this vital work." Sarah stepped forward, her eyes bright with emotion. "When I was at my lowest point, struggling to care for my daughter while seriously ill, help came from an unexpected source. Not everyone is that fortunate. The Lily's Quarter Foundation aims to be that unexpected source of help for families in crisis, offering emergency assistance, housing support, medical care, and most importantly, hope for a better tomorrow." She turned to Lily. "And now, I'd like to introduce the inspiration behind it all, our daughter Lily." Lily approached the microphone with practiced confidence, standing on a small step stool to reach it properly. She wore a pretty yellow dress, and her dark hair was neatly braided with ribbons that matched. "Hi, everyone," she began clearly. "My name is Lily Reynolds. When I was 6, I went to the store with my only quarter to try to buy a new mommy because mine was sick. I didn't know what else to do." She paused, looking at Matthew and Sarah. "I didn't find a mommy that day, but I found my daddy, and he helped make my real mommy better." A collective awe swept through the crowd, and several people wiped away tears. "Sometimes kids like me worry a lot about grown-up problems," Lily continued. "We worry about our parents being sick or sad or not having enough money. This new store is for families who need help, like my mum and I did. And guess what? It all started with just 1 quarter." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a shiny quarter, holding it up for everyone to see. "This isn't my original quarter. That one is in a special case at home. But this quarter is special too. My dad says it's a symbol of how small things can lead to big changes." Lily's voice grew more serious. "Today we're putting this quarter in a special place in the store to remind everyone that helping others doesn't have to cost a lot. Sometimes all it takes is noticing someone who needs help and caring enough to do something about it." Applause was thunderous as Lily, with Matthew and Sarah on either side, placed the quarter in a custom-built display case near the store entrance. The case was inscribed with the words, "Every journey begins with a single step. Every hope begins with a single act of kindness." The ribbon cutting followed, with Lily doing the honors while cameras flashed. As the crowd dispersed into the store, many stopping to congratulate the family or share their own stories of struggle and perseverance, Matthew found himself overwhelmed by the journey that had brought them to this moment. A year ago, he had been a successful but solitary man, his life centered around business growth and profit margins. Now he stood in a store dedicated to community service, with a wife and daughter who had transformed his understanding of success and purpose. "Penny for your thoughts," Sarah said, slipping her arm through his as they watched Lily proudly giving Martha a tour of the children's section. "They're worth at least a quarter," Matthew replied with a smile, pulling her closer. Sarah laughed, the sound still one of his favorite things in the world. "Fair enough. Quarter for your thoughts, then." Matthew looked around at the bustling store, at the families already benefiting from the services they'd created, at Lily's joyful face as she explained something to her grandmother with animated gestures. "I was just thinking about value," he said finally. "About how we measure what matters in life. For years, I measured success in dollars and market share. I thought I was building something important, but I was really just accumulating wealth without purpose." Sarah rested her head against his shoulder. "And now? Now I understand what real value is." He turned to face her fully. "It's not what you have. It's who you love and how you help others. It's the family we've built, the community we're supporting, the difference we're making together." "That's quite a revelation from a business tycoon," Sarah teased gently. "I had good teachers," Matthew replied, his gaze moving to Lily. "A little girl with a quarter showed me what truly matters." Later that evening, after the successful opening day had concluded, the family returned home, not to Matthew's downtown penthouse, which he had sold months ago, but to a comfortable house in a good neighborhood, chosen together and filled with the warmth of their shared life. Lily, exhausted from the excitement, fell asleep quickly after dinner. Matthew stood in her doorway, watching her peaceful slumber, still sometimes amazed that this extraordinary child was now legally his daughter. He felt Sarah's presence before he saw her, the subtle shift in the air that always told him she was near. She wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, resting her cheek against his back. "She was amazing today," Sarah murmured. "So poised, so genuine." "She gets that from her mother," Matthew replied, turning to embrace his wife. "You were pretty amazing yourself, Executive Director Wilson Reynolds." Sarah smiled at the title. "It still feels surreal sometimes, all of this. The foundation, the store, our family, but there are moments when I'm afraid I'll wake up back in that tiny house, sick and desperate, with Lily trying to take care of me instead of the other way around." Matthew guided her gently away from Lily's door, not wanting their conversation to disturb their daughter's rest. In the living room, he pulled Sarah close. "This is real," he assured her, "all of it, and we've only just begun." Sarah looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the same wonder he often felt. "Who would have thought that the worst day of my life, so sick I couldn't move watching my daughter try to be the adult, would lead to all this?" "Life has a way of surprising us," Matthew said. "A year ago, if someone had told me I'd be a husband and father, running a foundation and opening a community-focused store, I would have thought they were crazy. And now I can't imagine any other life. This, you and Lily, this is the dream I didn't know I had." Sarah reached up to touch his face gently. "Thank you for following my daughter home that day. Thank you for seeing us, really seeing us, when we were at our most vulnerable. Thank you for letting me." "Hen," Matthew replied, "for trusting me with your heart and with Lily's." Outside their window, Detroit continued its own journey of rebirth and renewal, a city finding new purpose after years of struggle, not unlike their own family's story. Within their home, the preserved quarter sat on a shelf in the living room, a humble reminder of how the smallest things can catalyze the greatest changes. Matthew knew there would be challenges ahead. The foundation was just beginning its work. The new store model would need time to prove its sustainability. Lily would grow and change, facing all the normal trials of childhood and adolescence. Life would bring its inevitable complications and setbacks. But he also knew that whatever came their way, they would face it together, a family forged not by circumstance or blood, but by choice, by love, and by the unshakable certainty that they belonged to each other. As the evening settled around them, Matthew and Sarah sat on their porch swing, watching the stars emerge in the spring sky. No words were needed in this moment of quiet communion, this peaceful acknowledgement of all they had built together. A family, a purpose, a future. All because of a little girl with a quarter who walked into a store one day looking to buy a mommy and instead found something far more precious, a father who would love her as his own, and the completion of a family that had always been meant to be. Fim da Historia. Dear listeners, we hope that Matthew, Sarah, and Lily's journey has touched your heart. Their story reminds us that families come in many forms, built not by blood, but by love, choice, and commitment. Sometimes the most precious gifts arrive in the most unexpected ways, even through a child's innocent request and a single quarter. If you enjoyed this emotional journey, please subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming stories that explore the depth of human connection. Don't forget to like this video and share your thoughts in the comments below. What part of the Reynolds family story moved you the most? We'd love to hear from you. Our playlist features similar inspiring narratives about unexpected connections and families formed through love rather than biology. Click the link on your left to discover more stories that will warm your heart and renew your faith in the power of compassion. Thank you for joining us today. Until our next story, remember that sometimes the smallest actions can lead to the most profound changes in our lives.